Hello. Hello. I am admitting people.
Hello, you there?
I'm here. I'm just admitting people. Just hold on. Hold on, folks. I'm admitting we have a number of guests. I'm going to admit all of you. All right. That's looking good. Good and good. Before we start, I have one more person, or actually I have a few more. Let's see. It's always something adding. I think everybody pretty much, I think, is in, it looks like, so far. We'll just go through the list here as a host. And I think we're good. It looks good. Okay. I think I have everyone in. We'll wait just a couple more minutes. Everyone looks good. Hello, and thank you all for joining. This is great. I love it. And I will wait just a couple more minutes and then we will get started. We have a lot of ground to cover today. But it's good to see all of you. Thank you for being here. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So let's wait just a couple more minutes, but not too much longer. I see we have, yes, one of our guests, Alicia Hall Moran, is connecting to audio, so that's good. I think we have one guest I am looking for that's not here yet. So we will definitely wait just a couple more minutes because I know she was intending to be here. And happy Saturday to everyone.
Happy Saturday.
Yes, very good. Okay. Let's see. I am going to go now. I guess she's not going to be here. I will wait another minute and then we'll get started. Okay, let me go into one spot. And here we are. Okay, very good. And let's go into one more thing. I think we're good. We're good for today. So, hello and welcome to Composer Conversations. I'm Bill Doggett, your host. This is a very special day and I'm grateful that all of you are joining. I have some house rules I need to mention. First, if you're not speaking or talking or participating, please stay muted. Secondly, especially during the screen share, I request that you are muted so that the music is not interrupted. I will take questions. You can put questions in the chat, but I prefer that you write them down. We will be answering questions at the end. Because we have a lot of ground to cover, I won't be answering questions in the middle, but going further. Then I will say to you this, if you have earbuds or headphones, there is a lot of amazing music that we're sharing that has a lot of really great detail, inner detail. So definitely I recommend the use of headphones or earbuds. And then I go further into, some people have asked me, what's going on in the background? What I have in the background is a tribute to the Civil Rights Movement. Yesterday, of course, we honored the 57th anniversary of the March on Washington. And this is actually my parents, a display of my parents' work. We have quite a family story in the Civil Rights Movement. Including at the top, you can see this rare newspaper. It's from April 5th, 1956. It's a rare African-American Los Angeles newspaper called the Herald Dispatch. And it has this great title, headline, LA, as in Los Angeles, Negroes to Walk with Rosa Parks in photo, only 4 months after she was engaged with the Montgomery bus boycott in December 1955. Last and final of all of the house rules, should we, and I don't think we will in this case, should there be any unexpected interruption where I have to prematurely cancel a meeting, please come right back within a minute or two. All right, so I'm going to go into prepared opening remarks that frame today's conversation. And I will go now to share screen. So there'll be, we will be in share screen for about the next 10 minutes, just giving you an idea. All right. Okay, August 29th, 2020 is symbolic in the paradigm of Black lives At this time in 2019, we commemorated the 400th anniversary of the arrival of the first slave ship of enslaved Africans at Jamestown. With deep reflection on the trauma of capture, deportment through the doors of no return, and the Middle Passage. We also reflected on the Trail of Tears, the collective trauma of enslaved Africans forced to labor on plantations that provided the capital worth and economic foundation for the livelihood of a young colonial experiment where purchased Africans valued at 3/5 of a person were frequently demonized, with bounties on their heads for daring to run away or engage in conscientious rebellions of slave revolts, for daring to dream about what their owners might view as demonic possession. This incessant idea of freedom, of self-worth and human dignity. Yesterday, August 28th, marked the 57th anniversary of the March on Washington, a critical moment in history that dared to dream of a world of freedom from racial discrimination and constricted opportunity, a call to action to strive for a more perfect union, a fierce urgency of now to bend the moral arc towards justice. Alas, in these past 57 years, the Black lives lost, potentials cut short, continues to mirror the collective trauma of the Middle Passage, of our forebears centuries ago. Today, we honor Emmett Till, who at age 14, 65 years ago, on August 28th, 1955, was brutally murdered. I go to the next slide. Welcome to the world of opera's story griot for Black lives, the world of composer Anthony Davis, the 2020 Pulitzer Prize for Music honoree. In our first slide, we're looking at 4 operas that we are going to focus on today. X, The Life and Times of Malcolm X, Amistad, Tanya, and the Central Park Five. Anthony Davis has also composed other operas, such as his second opera, Under the Double Moon, Wakanda's Dream, and chamber operas Lilith and Lear on the Second Floor. Yet the challenge of composing while Black has been not only the experience of Anthony Davis, but the experience of myriads and generations of African-American composers. In this very important July 3rd, 2020 New York Times article, the well-known composer, modern composer, George Lewis examines that. It's titled, Lifting the Cones from Black Composers. It speaks to a rich legacy that Black composers have, but yet it also speaks to the history of a forced invisibility. I would like to say, in honor of the bestowal of the 2020 Pulitzer Prize for Music to Anthony Davis in May, I have a special treat, which I have titled Reflections on Black Lives Matter Past with Poignance for 2020 that connects to my introductory remarks. We will now go to it. There is much to say afterwards, and I hope you will enjoy what you're about to see and experience.
And in my case, when I think about the fact that Ronald Reagan was the governor of California, Richard Nixon was the president of the US, the whole apparatus of the state was set up against me. They had all of their resources, and the FBI, the police, and they really meant to send me to the death chamber in order to make a point. It really didn't matter who I was, or it was that I was a very convenient figure to make a point that they would suppress any efforts at revolution and liberation.
You will not be able to stay home, brother. You You will not be able to plug in, turn on, and cop out. You will not be able to lose yourself on Skag and skip out for beer during commercials because the revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be brought to you by Xerox in 4 parts without commercial interruptions. The revolution will not show you pictures of Nixon blowing a bugle and leading a charge by John Mitchell, General Abrams, and Mendel Rivers to eat hog maws confiscated from a Harlem sanctuary. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be brought to you by the Schaefer Award Theater and will not star Natalie Woods and Steve McQueen or Bullwinkle and Julia. The revolution will not give your mouth sex appeal. The revolution will not get rid of the nubs. The revolution will not make you look 5 pounds thinner. The revolution will not be televised, brother. There will be no pictures of you and Willie Mae pushing that shopping cart down the block on the dead run or trying to slide that color TV into a stolen ambulance. NBC will not be able to predict the winner at 8:32 on reports from 29 districts. The revolution will not be televised. There will be no pictures of pigs shooting down brothers on the instant replay. There will be no pictures of Whitney Young being run out of Harlem on a rail with a brand new process. There will be no slow motion or still lifes of Roy Wilkins strolling through Watts in a red, black, and green liberation jumpsuit that he had been saving for just the right occasion. Green Acres, Beverly Hillbillies, and Hooterville Junction will no longer be so goddamn relevant, and women will not care if Dick finally screwed Jane on Search for Tomorrow because black people will be in the street looking for a brighter day. The revolution will not be televised.
and thus fly in Harlem. Have you heard the word? Your life is marked, say the streets. It's the bomb, then a firebomb. They'll get you, watch you now. They'll get money, say it's police. It's the bomb, then a firebomb. They'll get you, watch you now. They'll get money, say it's police. Some say higher hands. It's the bomb, then a firebomb. They'll get you, watch you now. They'll get money, say it's police. Some say higher hands. Men are hunting you down. Assalamu alaikum.
Anthony Davis, the floor is yours. Congratulations on this incredible honor bestowed on you, the 2020 Pulitzer Prize of Music.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Bill. And it's interesting to hear the Audubon Ballroom come to life again from that end of X. It's kind of a culmination of a lot of the rhythmic material that came in. It was earlier in the opera, from Louisa's aria, from the social worker, from a lot of stuff in the first act. Then the idea of using rhythmic structures as leitmotifs, as connecting tissue in the opera. So when he's talking about his house being bombed, when his friends are talking about it, his supporters, the ostinato is the same pattern that was used when Louise was describing the bombings of their home, of their previous homes, and the burning of their homes in Omaha and other places, before they settled in Lansing. So so it's like this idea of in an opera, you kind of recreating this, you're using memory and history and their history and things that this idea, this recurring cycle of violence is something that haunts Malcolm his entire life.
Yes, and I thought I wanted to call out, I just made a note. Some say in the lyrics, some say it's police, some say it's higher than. That's
Hired hands, yeah.
Hired hands. But still, that is really poignant for today. I mean, the police is still at the center of conversation in our conversation about race and racial inequity. It's amazing. I mean, it's clairvoyant.
Well, if you look at how the police handled the assassination and the lack of protection, knowing the ongoing threats that were there. There's a recent documentary about the assassination, from people, one guy was researching it, and they actually arrested the wrong person too. The initial person they arrested was involved, but the others were not.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Go ahead, please.
So it's kind of clear that there was some kind of police complicity in this, in what happened. And he was the most surveilled person in America, period. The FBI, there's more surveillance was done on Malcolm X than any other person in American history.
That's amazing. And
Oh,
by
yeah.
J. Edgar Hoover, for
J.
sure.
Edgar Hoover, yes. Yeah.
And more than more on Malcolm X than on Martin Luther King?
Yes, yes.
Interesting, interesting. Wow, who knew? Who knew? No, it's an amazing juxtaposition of images that I wanted to create, of image and sound, to open our conversation today. Anthony is the master. He is literally opera's story griot for Black Lives, and his career has been founded in this storytelling and this uplifting and forcing us, or inviting us, I should say is a better word, inviting us to reconsider the understanding of Black life in American history. And Anthony is just, I just want to congratulate you on that. I'm going to now go into more of my prepared remarks. We have quite a bit of territory today to do. So I'm going to say from that, enter the revolution, X, the life and times of Malcolm X, an opera in 3 acts is perhaps, in my opinion, and in the opinion of many of the people here with us, the greatest work to depict Black lives and the Black struggle for freedom and human dignity in the past 50 years. We're going to listen to the opening of X, an excerpt of the opening of X, and we want you to listen to how rhythm is used as a narrative device, and to listen to also the threaded singing. So we're going back into share screen, and then we'll come back and talk about it. So Anthony, there's a lot in this, especially around Theloni's libretto and her choice of words. You know, the thing that stands out for a lot of people is this: no more darky, no more Rastus, no more niggard, will just be Africa or Africans. Can you speak to that and to the storytelling and to how this particular opera starts with this particular kind of setting?
Yeah, well, this is a Garvey meeting, Marcus Garvey supporters, and Earl Little was a minister and involved in supporting that movement. And so the setup in the opera is that Earl doesn't come home, and then you find out that he's been murdered. He's been pushed onto a train track,
Right.
and so what they're doing is this whole aspiration is of escaping America, the idea of this dream of and really imagined Africa as this place where we could finally be free. So no more nigger, no more racist, no more, all the names that people are called, etc. And when we see Africa, and the Black Star, of course, taking the Black Star home is a reference to Marcus Garvey. So I think Talani did a great job of putting, and because Talani is an historian as well as a great writer and poet, putting it in the context of the whole liberation struggle, that not just from the vantage point of the 60s or even the 50s, but back to the 40s and back to the different stages and different stages of how the liberation struggle played out.
Interesting. Yeah, and I know as a very small child of the movement myself, my father was involved with hosting African dignitaries in the early 1960s when the decolonization of Africa was very prominent. Of course, Nkrumah in Ghana and others all over the continent were also finding their voice in connecting with people like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. I know as a child, I remember very, very clearly meeting some of the family that we hosted at my father's church. So yes, absolutely speaks to that. But it's a journey. It's really interesting. And in Malcolm, and actually really build and display in such an interesting way this journey, not of just Malcolm, but it also speaks to a larger journey. And I think that's what's really so.
I think Talani was thinking about the idea of how African American thought evolved, political thought, and that and I think that's and you see it again in the beginning of Act 2, Scene 2, when you hear all the mother, the goddess mother character, and then you see another Garvey preacher type, and then Malcolm appears as a street preacher, and using humor he asserts his authority in that. So it's very so I think that's something that's really smart that Talani is one of the most gifted, is probably the most gifted librettist around. But and I think the reason is also that the connections to the history and are deep and interwoven into the story. And for me, it gave me the opportunity musically to I was thinking of how political slogans and language is used, and then using them as rhythmic motifs too, repeating patterns. We'll be black men again. We'll be black men again. We'll be black men, and then they have another line: "Hang his picture high, Ethiop's probably." So you have this interlocking thing of different layers of political rhetoric underneath more lyrical lines like that. So this idea of how political how the repetition that you hear in rallies, political rallies, slogans, et cetera, that could be used and explored in music.
That's amazing. Yeah, and I think you are in American opera. I think you are the first person to. It's very innovative. When X was debuted and workshopped in '85 and premiered in '86, it was very innovative. I'd never heard this kind of layering. Can you speak to that?
Well, I think that grew out of my instrumental music. I had been writing before that, Hemispheres and Episteme and some other my albums. I was very interested in also using orchestra as kind of different choirs, rhythmic choirs. So you create polyrhythmic structures using different choirs of instruments. That's pretty evident in Hemispheres and in Episteme. And so I actually use that as a choir itself. You know, when Africa for Africans comes in, it's actually thinking of the chorus as a drum, as if it were a drum with the different pitches representing parts of the drum. You know, so I think that that liberated me. Something I discovered in the course of working on X, and also sometimes in my approach to chorus comes sometimes from big band writing too. You know, like where I have, I think of the soprano as the high trumpets. So like literally, if I orchestrated it with saxophones and trumpets and trombones, etc., it would be quite evident that it comes from also Afro-Cuban orchestras and also of course Ellington and Strayhorn were big inspirations for me, and Charles Mingus. So that language influenced how I approach opera, and particularly using different vocal choirs.
Interesting. And what about Machito? Was he an influence?
yeah,
Or Chano Pozo,
That's what I
Dizzy
was thinking
Gillespie?
about. Yeah, that's what I was thinking about, the Afro-Cuban orchestra. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, yeah.
And Mario Baiza, and there's this idea also of how they use exploration of rhythm, and also the dynamism of the brass sections, et cetera, all that stuff. So it was always interesting to me. So you hear that come in, also realizing that it's a Pan-African world, and that's something that's evident with Marcus Garvey, even as early as Marcus Garvey, that we're connected to the wider to Africa, people of African descent in the Caribbean as well as Africa itself. So that language was important to have in the opera.
That's wonderful. Well, our next stop on the X journey is to Louise's aria. And Louise is the mother, of Malcolm X. It's Louise and Earl Little are his parents. The challenge here in this aria is that it brings forward a story, very much so, in a whole range of ways. The thing I need to say first off is that the parents for Louise and Earl Little were really prominent in their area as civil rights activists. But unfortunately, as they were also prominent in particular in Wisconsin, and Wisconsin we are hearing more about today through Kenosha, unfortunately. They were prominent in Wisconsin and Michigan as civil rights activists, but they were followed and targeted by a division of the Ku Klux Klan and white supremacy groups called the Black Legion. So you hear this quite heavily in this aria, this foreboding, and Anthony is a master of creating a feeling of oral, what I call an oral and visual foreboding in his music and how he writes it. So it's really quite stunning. It's a very difficult aria. I believe it's sung by Priscilla Baskerville, if I'm correct.
Priscilla,
right?
yes, fantastic.
Yes, Priscilla did a fabulous job, but there's a lot to talk about after this. So let's take a listen. I've created a visual landscape that really also adds depth to the experience of this particular aria. So we'll go now back to share screen. Okay.
Marked by a feeling of loneliness, I am a fool. 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 I am a fo
That is really an extraordinary work. When I say it's an extraordinary work, it's an aria, but there is so much in it. Not only the rhythm as a narrative device, but also rhythm as a leitmotif. And and all of this multimeter going on. Please speak to it.
Yeah, well, you hear that recurring 11/4 pattern. That's, one da 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 da. Okay, so so 11 is something I use a lot. I mean, 11 comes back in the opera all over the place, and then and that becomes riding closer, riding closer, riding closer. So also almost the sound of hooves of the horses themselves. So I try to do this. It's the kind of ominous thing of the clan at the door, coming. They're coming for him, and also the way it's constructed in terms of pitch is that it's always pairs of instruments. One like and all these thirds, like major third up, then minor third up. Okay, so and then the inverse in the bottom. So it's always these pairs like of the inversion of the motif. It happens at the same time. So that these paired kind of what my friend George always used to call my palindromes. I'm obsessive palindromes. I always use palindromes all the time. So it has those couplets are always happening, and then constructing the vocal line on top. And Priscilla was amazing. I mean, she hit that D flat. This was unbelievable when she goes up the D flat. So, and then a lot of it, it starts with the high B flat she sings too. I mean, and then to use writing the vocal line, I tried to write it. You could almost write the vocal line at 4/4, because it's and so that it floats over the rhythmic structure. So it has a sense of floating on top of it. And then at the end, you hear it with just string quartet, actually. So it becomes like a Viennese school thing. So it has the B flat, the high play. I remember so clearly, that the kind of chromatic thing with the strings, and then and finally culminates with, again, using all these palindromic thirds things that come in until the cello rondo, and then that concludes the aria. So I think that part of it is thinking about her inner struggle and her fears, and that it's almost as if this the obsession with those thirds is part of it. I mean, how it can play through musically, that you can use. So this persistence of this pattern all the time that exists almost all the time as the aria goes along is in a way, to me, it was emblematic of the violence that's coming. The violence that's always there. The violence that Malcolm would say is as American as apple pie.
Right. No, but the construction is just incredible, and I don't know. And I'm pretty well versed in this. I don't know of another American opera before this that uses this. This has this really amazing construction. The only thing that I'm thinking of that's not American, that relates to this in terms of looking at the orchestral and the vocal construction, is Berg's Wozzeck. So I
love Wozzeck, so
yeah. I mean, and I know I shouldn't be saying this, but someone in Alicia Moran's family also loves Wozzeck. But yeah, it has for me, and I'm sure for a lot of people, this extraordinary construction, and once you speak about it, it becomes even more and more fascinating. And as you have done, it's really quite a tenement of outstanding composition. It really is. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you for sharing that with us. Yeah, really this idea of leitmotif and foreboding comes through in this. And it's wonderful. It's wonderful. So we're going to go next. Our next stop in our X experience is to a critical stop, which is Malcolm's aria. There's an extraordinary clairvoyance for 2020. And I want to say, as I have said previously to Anthony, it's extraordinary that you and Thulani in the middle 80s, I mean, this was workshopped in 1985 in Philadelphia, and it was premiered at New York City Opera in 1986, that you would have this idea already for 2020 that is so now. That's extraordinary. And, you know, and this aria of Malcolm also speaks to the trauma of the oppression of Black men, symbolized by George Floyd's death, you know, death by a knee on the neck, and then magnified by the shooting of Jacob Blake. It's extraordinary. It's extraordinary and clairvoyant. And I should also share just a little bit of Thulani's text, which will give you a feeling of how this connects to what I'm saying. So, quote, the aria begins text-wise with, I wouldn't tell you what I know. You wouldn't hear my truth. You want the story, but you don't want to know. My truth is, you've been on me a very long time, longer than I can say. As long as I can remember, you've had your foot on me, always pressing. That is an extraordinary clairvoyance for today. Anthony, how did you and Thulani come up with that? I mean, that's amazing.
Well, Thulani is, I have to give all credit to her. I mean, I think she captured, one thing that was so beautiful about how she set that aria set up is that it's actually an interrogation. So when we staged it in City Opera, Ben Holt was playing Malcolm, and he was looking up, and there's a spotlight on him, and his hands are tied behind his back, and sitting in a chair, and as if he's being questioned by the police. But the idea of the aria was that you don't hear the questions, and they don't get the answer they expect. And so the answer is, Malcolm's answer is a depiction of his rage and where his rage comes from, why he has rage. And so you hear him talk about his mother and his father, and a way and his frustration as a Black man. So it comes through in the aria, because it's the answer it's the questions they never ask. They don't ask those questions. They're not interested in those questions, but he's giving the answer anyway. So that's the idea of the interrogation, and I think some of it. This opera was written. I remember it was really interesting, because I summoned all the rage in me that I felt about everything, you know, about the political situation, about racial slights I've experienced, and I think Thulani felt that too. And so when it was like when we were working on the opera, we were summoning this up. They meant that it was this, and for me it was almost this fit of white rage of rage, you know, almost blinding rage I felt when I was writing particularly this aria. I felt that, some of the music in the aria comes from the overture that it's in the overture, and the overture was based on a piece called Middle Passage, which was a solo piano piece I wrote, and it has this, again, this kind of bitonality, this pattern in around B in the left hand, and then it has this B flat A flat thing, which you hear in the beginning of Africa for Africans. All that stuff comes in down, dee, da 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 da. So you hear this kind of repeating these motifs over the pattern, and then it becomes a 5/4 pattern that I use, and it was interesting, because when I was writing that music, I was noticing when I was playing the piano, I had this pattern in the left hand and a pattern in the right hand I played together, and I noticed that if I just emphasized the thumbs when I played it, it was this other rhythmic pattern that was very interesting to hear. So I accentuated that by having the marimba play what my thumbs actually played on the piano.
That's amazing. I mean, it's so innovative. I mean, I don't think that other people are writing in this time like this. I mean, and the way it comes together, it's just amazing. I mean,
Well,
it's
I think,
fabulous.
I think there was certainly minimalism was having Steve Reich and Philip Glass and that stuff. But I always felt that it was limited, particularly harmonically. I wanted to expand, to use a different harmonic idiom, and also the potential for more tension, harmonic tension as well as rhythmic tension. That it's not about, to me, this kind of, I mean, to me, it was too facile to do pentatonic stuff all the time, that kind of stuff. So, but I felt that the harmonic tension could amplify the rhythmic tension. And rhythmic tension could create drama. So, and some of that came from my study of gamelan music, from Indonesia, from Bali and Java.
Right.
And I was so fascinated with how they use rhythmic and the finishes that happened in it, and that you could make a drama that kind of what I would call a rhythm drama, that's based around rhythmic structure. So that was sort of the roots of some of those ideas.
That's amazing. Well, let's go listen to an excerpt of Malcolm's aria. It's very powerful, and there's more to the text than I shared, but I think you'll enjoy this. And it speaks unbelievably. It's so clairvoyant for August 28th, 29th, 2020. I really am just taken by the connection to now. Is amazing. So going back into share screen.
I wouldn't tell you what I know. You wouldn't hear my truth. You want a story, but you don't want to know. My truth is you've been on me a very long time. Longer than I can say. As long as I've been living, you've had your foot on me, always pressing. My truth is white men killed my old man, of my mother mad. My truth is love, my truth could kill, my truth is fury. They always told me you don't have a chance. You're a nigger after all. You can jitterbug and prance, but you'll never run the ball. My truth told me quit before you start. I've shined your shoes. I've sold your dope. Bought your bootleg. Laid with us a soap. But the crime is mine. I will do your time so you can sleep. I won't be a perpetual on the street at night, but I won't forget any evil that's white. My truth is a hammer coming from the back. It will beat you down when you least expect. I wouldn't tell you what I know. You want the truth. You want the truth. You want the truth, but you don't want to know.
Phenomenal. And this particular aria and the text speaks to so much of today. I mean, it is as if he is also Jacob Blake Sr., Jacob's father, or one of George Floyd's brothers who has spoken so poignantly. It's not only masterful, but it's extraordinary for how relevant this work that premiered in 1986 is for 2020 and for 2021. That I continue to find to be unreal.
Yeah, but you could look at the other way around too. It's how little has changed.
True. True.
That's what I mean, that to the sense that, that threat existed then and exists now, and existed, with Emmett Till, it existed, has existed all along. So, that's in when facing systemic racism, that's something that, it's been with us, and it's part of what America is. I mean, and it's built on that. So you have to, so in a way, when you speak to those things from the point of view of the 50s and 60s, it's still relevant today because the same conditions still exist.
And we see that in an extraordinary way. I mean, the whole topic of this week deals with this whole issue of racial injustice with the police brutality and this big whole.
And the danger that we're going to enter into another Jim Crow period. I mean, if Trump wins the election, heaven forbid,
True.
I think that's where we're headed. I mean, I really do. I think we're headed toward fascism and toward another post-Reconstruction era. And I think Henry Louis Gates, when he did one of the reasons he did the Reconstruction series was realizing that this moment where we are today is so reminiscent of where we were then.
Which is true and very sad. I hope your prediction is wrong.
I'm not predicting that. I'm just saying that the danger, that's the danger. It's there. It's really there. And I think that we know also that, with COVID and stuff, I mean, I think it's real genocide. I mean, we're facing genocide.
Right.
I mean, let's face it, and it's not, and it goes beyond. And I think Trump's response to the realizing that it affects minority communities, blacks and Latino communities, I mean, he's happy with that.
Yep, and you see that we saw that this week with his acceptance speech and the showcase of no social distancing or masks at the White House South Lawn, as well as his event in New Hampshire last night.
Yeah.
Apparently, white people, it's not a disease of white people or racial discrimination and fear of loss of life by policemen is not a white issue. It's a black and brown issue. So but your opera, X speaks for today. And as you know, back in 2013, I was right on top of it. That's like how incredibly clairvoyant you and Talani continue to be, frankly. I mean,
Well, Talani, I mean, she's amazing, right? I mean, I think we're going to be working on a new opera called Greenwood 1921 about the Tulsa race massacre, and I'm very excited about that. That looks like it's going to happen. So I'm excited that that's going to be happening in the future.
That's wonderful.
And again, her ability to research and find things behind the story, and also to in her writing. I mean, when she wrote Louise's aria, for example, we both had models from the past. I looked at Ellington and Strayhorn and Mingus and those figures, and and then on the classical side, like Berg and all kinds of Stravinsky. But she had similar models. Like for Louise's aria, it's Sterling Brown's poetry. Sterling Brown was the kind of model for the structure, the verse structure, and how she used the verse structure in that. So no, but it's been an amazing collaboration. It's ironic that we were related, that we discovered each other in New York years later. But it's and it's amazing. Been amazing to work with her.
Yeah, well, clearly, and as you know, I've said in a reference to a very well-known combination, Talani and you are like De Ponte and Mozart, or Hofmannsthal. It's clearly there. So wonderful. Our next and final visit to X, which has been considered in the New Yorker article in May of this year as the revolutionary opera. We are going to listen to a segment called We Are Brothers. There's a lot in it. There's a lot to talk about it. This particular segment provides, if you will, a mirrored window into the world of Black lives and Black people of the 1960s. It's really a foundational aria, or foundational ensemble and aria that provides a audio and visual understanding of the foundation for the Black Power movement of the 1970s. There's a lot in it. We'll talk about it afterwards. And let me go back to share screen here.
Gold is not your name, it's a slave name. It's a slave name. Smith is not your name, it's a slave name. It's a slave name. It's a slave name. It's a slave name. What are you gonna do with a slave name? What are you gonna do with a slave name? You need a good name. You need a holy name. Holy name. A name that praises you and God. A name like Malik al-Milkar. must rebuild the black family and our communities ravaged by despair. We need to look to our brothers in Africa taking back their plundered countries, telling Massa what time it is. We need to work, we need jobs, and we have to create them. But we know if whites are forced to give us their jobs, there'll be war. But erase war. We need freedom, justice, equality. Freedom, 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 freedom. Equality, equality, justice. Down south, blacks sit in and redneck sick dogs on them, bomb their churches. Now who are the lawbreakers? Who are the violent ones? Muslims don't expect anybody to give our people freedom. We want to stand up against racism. All black people, together.
Again, just this extraordinary creation of mood, as well as in the text and in the music. I think I've always looked at this and said to myself, good Lord, you know, what are some of the things I've written down? We need freedom, justice, equality. Where have we heard that? We heard that yesterday. You know, and this whole idea, you know, that Malcolm is speaking, that talks to, you know, who are the violent ones? You know, bombing, you know, their churches, who are the violent ones, speaks to today, as in this week, to the right-wing militia vigilantes at protests in Portland and in Kenosha. It's just really an extraordinary anticipation. And why I, perhaps more than anyone, have been working towards having X be reclaimed since 2013. It's just an incredible and beautifully relevant statement for our times.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. It was again, the 11, the pattern that you hear, you know, that thing that keeps coming back. But this time I wrote it at phasing it, and it's written actually in 4/4, and it's phases against the rhythms, because I wanted to be able to use the speech rhythms and feel comfortable within a 4/4 setting when over the speech. And then the playful thing, part of it's the sense of play too, because Malcolm had this great sense of humor, and so like what are you gonna do with a slave name? And so, so I put it in swing. You know, what are you gonna do with a slave name? Okay, so it's like so all of a sudden this swing thing comes in. It's and swing. You need a good name. You need a good name. You know, so this whole thing, the way again, the influence of big band writing too. I mean, and then it goes into the different groove when they go Toussaint, Kiana. So that's using that rhythmic structure and the la, mumpa, inkruma, you know, against it. So you have this idea of this movement being built up using repetition to build this rhythmic momentum, that using the names of African leaders, you know, as part, you know, of that. So this kind of joy also, it's uplifting to that, for the people, for them to think about the potential of the end of colonialism in Africa. And that was the thought in the early 60s, that the end of colonialism meant that racism could end here too.
Interesting.
And I didn't play out quite that way, but I think that, but the hope and the excitement about the liberation of African nations, I think was you know, that was the fuel. I mean, a lot of when I read interviews with jazz musicians at the time, like Max Roach, for example, is a great example of that. You know, or and Sonny Rollins, all of them were obsessed with Africa in different ways, thinking about Africa and thinking about the potential. There's this potential of the promise of the end of colonialism.
Interesting, yeah, and certainly, I think it's interesting as we talk about this to look at what is clearly a through line from Marcus Garvey to Malcolm X, and you know, the whole Pan-African idea of liberation and freedom reaches really its height, certainly in the 60s with the whole iconography and the whole ideology of Malcolm X.
Yeah, I think I would say so. And also the fact that that's what made Malcolm such a threat and was viewed as such a threat by the FBI and others is because his international connections he was making through Islam as well as Saudi Arabia and Libya, other places, but also with African nations. I mean, also he was going to go to the UN to accuse America of human rights violations.
That's amazing. He was so ahead of his time. And,
so
I mean,
I think that's something we should be doing now. You know, a lot of these, I mean, it's to be a symbolic thing, but I think that we should, I mean, there should be people going to the UN, also to monitor our elections. I mean, we do it, they do it for third world countries. We're a third world country about now, you know, so we'll monitor ours.
Too true for now. I mean, it's that's what makes this so extraordinary. Again, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I am just thrilled by the existence of a work that speaks so powerfully for today. You know, and I'm grateful to hear and to know that there is a new dawning come. You know, and you know, it's interesting in the previous conversation you and I had. You know, the challenge of X in performance, you know, I've had several people that, you know of our connection and they said, well, you know, X, you know, I heard about X when it first debuted and there was all this talk and everybody was looking forward to it. And then all of a sudden it disappeared. But the challenge is that X represented a threat in some way to the idea set of board of directors and you know, artistic directors and managers at opera companies, because it represented an idea set and represented a people that I guess they were concerned about coming into their opera house. Would you say there's something to that at all?
Yeah, I think that there was that fear. I mean, X reviews were really interesting because I remember when they came in New York, when the response by some of the New York critics and stuff, it was very interesting because I wasn't being compared to my contemporaries at all. I was saying, well, you know, this isn't Verdi or Wagner. Okay, wait a second. I mean, now I mean, because and instead I was writing music about the wrong thing. That opera is supposed to be about love and human relationships, and not about politics. And that was a big deal. I mean, a lot of the critics were thinking that, you know, that the subject matter was inappropriate to opera, and that it should not. And I think it should not be taken up in opera. I mean, Nixon in China came on in after X, and I think that some of the criticism from the New York Times for Donald Hanahan was similar toward that. But I think that this fear of opera becoming a political arena, entering into the political arena rather than just being this kind of escape. I mean, and I say this sometimes, people will look, oh, I want to go to opera to escape. I want to go to this to escape. And we can't afford to escape. That stuff's not, escape isn't happening. That's not happening. And that we need to in a way fuel the fire that is in our country that may foster some change. And so I think sometimes art can be that fuel. Art can be a fuel because in a way we illuminate what's behind what's happening. And but it's a very different vantage point. I mean, I feel a lot more connection to Weill and Brecht in that sense too, because of what they faced in the late 20s and early 30s in Berlin. I feel I'm in a similar circumstance.
I agree with that, and also, but you have company, and I've spoken to this previously. opera that has been considered political and not appropriate, as you're talking about, for certain audiences or for certain people who are gatekeepers wanting to control the narrative of, is very significant. Such as, excuse me, Marcus, can you mute yourself, please? Thank you. All right, so sorry for that. The idea here is that you are connected. X and the death of Klinghoffer are very much connected in the sense of these are the two American operas of the last 20 to 30 years that have been most reviled for their political narratives. They have been.
It's funny that he cast as the two terrorists were Eugene Perry and Thomas Young, who were the stars of X.
Yes, exactly.
So it's very funny. So it's actually, it's like, so I think that's a funny thing. No, I think Klinghoffer, I think that's easily Adams' most important opera to me. I mean, I always think musically it's the most ambitious, and I was excited when I heard it. So I think. It's funny because John and I were friends. When I was writing X in the early in the 80s, in '84, I was living in San Francisco for a little while, and so we would get together for dinners and stuff and talk about what we were doing. So that was fun, and with my friend Paul Drescher, who's a great composer in the Bay Area. So, but I think. I think that there was a threat, and the sense of being afraid of the political content. I think it's funny that when X opened, they said that they had in the New York Times on the Sunday before X opened, John Rockwell wrote an article in the Times, previewing the opera, but the title of the title for the whole article, he said Malcolm X anti-Semite ? That was the title. And I said, oh crap, what is that? I mean, maybe they were confusing. I said they're confusing with Farrakhan or something, but I said that's not. I mean, that's ridiculous. But in a way, they were already playing that game, dividing us, the Black community and the Jewish community, and when in fact, we have very aligned aspirations, and so I remember being upset about it. I'm realizing that was being played in a way that they were trying to play this. So as a result, when it opened with City Opera, many of the donors who normally donated to City Opera withdrew their funding from the City Opera because the Malcolm X anti-Semite ? Means okay, and so I think that's an issue, and I'm grateful that Beverly Sills went ahead and really and supported the opera the way she did.
Yeah, no, I am grateful too, but that followed it, and both I definitely have to say that both X and Klinghoffer are probably the two operas in the American late 20th century canon that are the most fiercely fought. It's a shame because if you look at what is done in theater, and I'm going to relate it back to San Francisco, American Conservatory Theater, or ACT under Carrie Perloff in particular, it is all about challenging the audience to reimagine and to reconsider their assumptions. The same at Marin Theater, very famously so. The Marin Theater and ACT are aligned. I was grateful, just as a brief side, in 2010 when Terrell McCraney's Brother and Sister plays, made their West Coast premiere, Magic Theater and ACT insisted that, these challenging works not be hidden or prevented from being performed. So I think we're entering a new time. But for the sake of time, I need to move on. We're going to continue our journey here. The revolution continues. Our next stops are two gyms in excerpts, an orchestral work titled Notes from the Underground, and Anthony's fourth opera called Tanya, based on the Patty Hearst Symbionese Liberation Army kidnapping story. There's a lot in this. This is probably about 15 minutes. I think it'll be obvious by the time it ends that there's quite a conversation that will ensue. So let's go back to share screening and enjoy.
And so that began, then the opera really began to take shape. And we worked back and forth a lot, you know, and actually wrote it in a very, for me, the shortest possible time I've ever written an opera. I think I wrote the whole thing in about 6 or 7 months. The SLA, in a way, was sort of the end of, I would think, the kind of revolutionary period in our culture when it marked sort of the end of certain kind of radicalism as we kind of descended later into the Reagan years, you know. So I felt that to me that there's so many elements of the opera. When I approached it musically, for example, how I depicted there's this kind of nostalgia toward the idea of the kind of romance of the revolution, the idea that what you can do can change the world.
I think the text lends itself to the confusion, the bizarre, the absurd, the horror, you know, of those times.
After the fire, after defeat, you're gonna see through the ashes, you're gonna feel the heat, you're gonna feel the heat, you're gonna feel the heat.
It has something to do with the collective memory. That's really the deal. So, you know, everybody knows I'm not Sinkay. But whatever I do know about him and whatever you know about him, and we find something between us. I mean, that's the beauty of the live performance in any case, is that we find some crystalline moment between us and that we search for one. But certainly, whatever happens happens among us, between us, in the collective memory. So
Thomas Young, of course, I've had a long relationship. He was in X, you know, played Elijah Muhammad and Street in X. And then he was in Under Double Moon. He played the inspector. And then in Amistad, he was the trickster god in my opera Amistad. So he's been in every opera I've ever written. Actually, the only opera he hadn't performed in was Tanya, because originally he wasn't in the original cast of Tanya. But I thought, when I thought of doing this part, I said, well, what would be really, and what would it be like on a recording? And I thought that he would be incredible on it. So I was so fortunate to get Tom to come here to sing.
Love you more than
And he's amazingly gifted in that he bridges both being a high lyric tenor, you know, who has high Ds, and a dramatic cutting quality to his voice. At the same time, he's a jazz singer, one of the greatest jazz singers today. And he's able to scat, he's able to sing in a jazz style, and there aren't too many people like that who do perform in both traditions at the highest level.
Anthony Davis, the floor is all yours. I know this would have a lot, you have a lot to say. Unmute yourself. Unmute yourself. Yeah,
Yeah,
there you go.
yeah. That was my wife Cindy was singing Tanya, so
Right.
I wrote the opera for her. Yeah, I'm a favorite of
Wow.
mine. And I think I had this dream, and I thought about when I was thinking about I watched I went when I was in opera theater to St. Louis doing Under the Dome of the Moon. I went to a performance of Abduction in Israel, Mozart opera, and I was really struck by it. Ram Vick was the director, because the way they did the seraph, he wasn't a fool at all. He was more sophisticated. He was more civilized than other characters in the opera, and so I was fascinated by that, and I was wondering, okay, how would Peter Sellers do Abduction? You know, and because he was, you know, he did one of his Mozart operas in Trump Tower, and he did the Don Giovanni in Harlem. You know, so
Right.
he had a history of that. So I thought, well, he would do it as Patty Hearst. So I said, I'm not sure it works all the way. And I was working in my mind, you know, about how the Patty Hearst story might work in Abduction. But then I thought, well, wait a second. Why don't I do Patty Hearst's story? You know, do Tanya, and then I had this, you know, this idea of, you know, seeing an opera diva holding an AK-47. You know, that image of her in the bank. You know, when they're robbing the bank, and I said, they got to do it, but I wanted to do it. I wasn't interested in doing a melodrama or something, you know, like the way made-for-TV stuff is, you know, or the movie was, or anything. I wasn't going to do an earnest depiction of this. I was interested in doing it as a dark comedy. It's kind of as using, and I was very interested in the idea of doing opera as comedy too. I mean, already done X, and I'd done a Moon. It was my third opera, and I'd done kind of this dramatic thing. So I was interested in this, also this story of you know, how Malcolm goes through Malcolm Little to Malcolm X to El Haj Malik, et cetera. You know, from Malcolm to Detroit Red, and Malcolm X and El Haj Malik, and it's this kind of transformational story. So I thought of this other kind of transformational story of Patty Hearst, Patty to Tanya, and back to Patty again. So and being brainwashed into Tanya and brainwashed back into Patty too. So I thought that was interesting, and something about it that was a different kind of story. And I was looking for someone who would write in a darkly humorous vein, and I found this writer, Michael John LaChiusa, is also a composer, and he's wicked funny. And so part of the thing, I mean, when he was a kid, he was telling me that when he was a kid, he used to pretend he was Patty Hearst. And they would get a cardboard box, and they put him in a cardboard box, and then leave him. You know, it's just like the whole idea of her in the closet, et cetera. So I began to think about that, and then so we decided in the opera to make the stage was divided in two halves. There was the kind of her world today, and then the closet world. What's behind the closet? And the closet world keeps getting bigger as the opera progresses. And there's a door. So so the conceit of the opera is that she thinks she should have died in the fire with the other people, the SLA. And so when she's kidnapped in the opera, when she revisits that, they actually come through the door into her kitchen, and take her, and she feels the door that's hot, and they take her away. So this idea of also the haunting of memory, all that stuff that she could have felt, etc. And it's interesting, this idea of the brainwashing. When I have this scene where she's brainwashed into Patty, and the SLA sing this. They sing this thing, and she's in the closet, and she emerges eventually as Tanya. She's brainwashed into Tanya, and then later in the second act, she's brainwashed back. And so I did musical things. For example, I did a retrograde inversion of some of the music I did before, when she's brainwashed back. So it was a lot of fun things that I played with, and also I was very fortunate to have Avery Brooks play Cinque in the opera, and he's such an amazing actor and incredible musician. Has perfect pitch, and he's a really good pianist as well, and he's an amazing musician, but also as an actor, what he brings as an actor, and then and what he did in terms of creating that character, and Cindy creating Patty Tanya, so there's actually a love duet of Cinque and Tanya in the second act, which all it is the 7 principles of African socialism, Imani, Kujigagulia, so it's like, it's the whole thing. That's all the words. And that's Michael John's thing, I said, that's great. That's so funny. I mean, it was, I'm not sure, Angela Davis thought it was funny, but I thought it was funny. But this idea of, and then when they're talking about their child, and the child is the gun.
Wow.
The gun. It becomes the gun. So a lot of things we played with in it. Also, even like the grim fairy tale, like she lives a trail of breadcrumbs from her bed to the closet door, and it's the idea she doesn't want to get lost in the way that someone gets lost in the woods. They would trail, but it's crackers instead of breadcrumbs, so it's crackers. And then she's eventually abducted into the closet world. So it's a much more surreal postmodern take of a different kind of storytelling, more surreal, not less. It's not necessarily chronological. It's also not. It was more a kind of deconstructed way of looking at the story. So I was excited to work in that realm. That's more like a psychological realm too.
Well, you did it beautifully. There needs to be a festival of Anthony Davis opera. Really, there does. I mean, Tanya, you have such a rich palette, musically and libretto-wise. There's all of your operas are just fantastic. And you deal with psychology as well. In the chamber opera I worked on, Lear on the Second Floor. That is very much, a look at the interperson and how the interperson relates to the outer world. We have, as I've already mentioned, so much to cover. We're going to continue now with another opera, which is Amistad. And so this is the opera about the 1839 slave ship rebellion, which was produced and world premiered by the Lyric Opera of Chicago in 1997. We're going to listen to 2 arias. The seminal aria from Act 2, To Own One's Own Life, One's Own Breath, sung by Stephen West, and They Come As If From the Heavens, which is known as the Goddess of the Waters aria. It's sung by Florence Quivar. To Own One's Own Life and One's Very Breath is the aria of John Quincy Adams, but it has extraordinary text that relates in poignance for today, August 29th, 2020. And I will read that text, the beginning of that text. To own one's own life, one's very breath, is the right of any human being on earth, in privilege or in suffering. It must not be our legacy to take men from liberty to keep them in a living death. We hold these beliefs unbroken to ourselves and our brethren for those needing sanctuary. Here our laws permit bondage, even beastly vengeance within our shores, but now with men taken hostage, we seek to deny even nature's law. This cannot stand. This cannot stand in our land. We must not make slaves of freemen. Such a moral outrage puts us all in bondage. It's incredible. And that's, again, Davis's text and the librettos by Filoni. Then the next aria, They Come to Me As If From the Heavens. It's the Goddess of the Waters aria in which she bemoans the great tragedy of the Middle Passage and the unending madness of massive death, which she receives in the form of African death thrown overboard from slave ships in the ocean. For me, it's one of the most beautiful and lyrical arias written in the American opera canon in the last 30 years. Let's go to screen share and enjoy these.
Life, once a very breath, is the right of any being to God grants time on earth, in a privilege or in suffering. It must not be our legacy from liberty to keep them in a living death. We hold these beliefs unbroken for ourselves and our brethren, for those needing sanctuary, who share our God and King. Here our laws permit bondage, even a beastly vengeance within our shores. But now with men taken hostage, we seek to deny the nature's law. This cannot stand. This cannot stand. This cannot stand in our land. We cannot chase slaves for other slaving men, and we must not make slaves of freedmen. Such a mortal outrage puts us all in bondage. Hear me well, our ruling is very plain. It has not been shown that these men were slaves. We shall not use the government to take people who are free and reduce them to slavery. They are free by our laws. They are free by our laws. sweets and flowers, as offering. I have a taste of honey, sweeter than I even in the tree. And sweet blossom bright, come out, a fragile, fragrant child, a holy life unknown to me.
With the
It's an amazing, just glorious aria. As you know, I have said that for a long time. When I first heard Amistad on a WFNT radio broadcast, I literally wanted, I think I actually went to the website and wanted to, I think there were 2 more performances. I was determined
Yeah,
almost.
they added to they had a performance in Martin Luther King Day in '98. So I
Yeah.
kind of went back for that. Priscilla actually did the goddess for that performance. That was
Yeah, no, I think it was within the run. I've never said this to you. Yeah, I actually went online. I think I went on to Southwest Airlines or American Airlines. I was actually looking at how much it would cost for me to go because I was really, I mean, this recording this live recording really is so engaging. And I was so moved just hearing this. I'm like, good Lord. I mean, am a contemporary opera guy.
right. Sure.
I mean, in the extreme, and people ask me, what are my favorite operas? I start with Wozzeck, Lulu, the Mercopolis case, maybe Peleus, certainly Tristan, but in the modern world and going forward, of course, Nixon, China, and Death of Klinghoffer, and operas like that. But this is just, and timely. Good Lord, how timely this is still. I mean, not just for 2020, but for 2021, because these themes that we're talking about, and hopefully we get past this Trump moment. Hopefully, we pray. Yeah. There is a world of opportunity to showcase the story griot operas of Anthony Davis. I think there is a new dawn coming. So please.
Oh, great. Yeah, it was well, again, Talani, just what she wrote in the lyrics were so incredible. And based around, Yemaya, the Yoruba goddess of the waters. And so we were thinking of ways. I remember we had a meeting George C. Wolfe directed the production in Chicago, and so the 3 of us were meeting how are we going to tell the story of the Middle Passage in the opera, because we wanted to tell the story. And I mean, Mary Baraka had done this great play, Slave Ship, which actually has kind of like a slave ship, and we decided we can't do that because he did that. So and then we thought about it. Then we got this idea of the goddess of the waters receiving the bodies of people thrown overboard in the Middle Passage, and we could tell it from her perspective, feeling that she sees that in a sense when they throw those bodies in the water, these people who were torn from their homes and etc., that this is a violation of her body. And so it's personal. It's a violation. It's in a sense a violation. And so that made it. I was so excited about it, and then when I saw the words, and again she has this interesting verse form in it, where give them to the air first, give them to the fire first, give them to this, and then there's and how she constructed that, and it was really interesting because the aria how it moved from one thing to another. It was a challenge because formally, in terms of the music form, I had to think about the kind of the opening, there's the opening of the, before the aria comes, how the scene opens. The instrumental part becomes intricate it comes back later underneath her, so this sense of going, you have, and I thought of it as a succession of dances. There were several dances within it, and I think her dance is this kind of sway of the ocean, thinking about the motion of the movement of the ocean, etc. And that's part of the whole aria too. When I first was writing the piece, it was funny because I did it on this thing on the piano, and I thought about using extreme registers and the idea of something that's tonal but collapsing in on a minor second. So and it actually was really funny when I first wrote it. I wrote the first passage in G sharp minor, which is really weird, and I thought about it, and I could play on the piano, it's great, but then I said, I can't use harmonics in that key. I mean, it's not. I want the natural harmonic. I should use A. So I had to, and for me, it's weird. It's always weird to switch keys. It's like I always hear it in the key that I'm thinking about it. So I had to kind of re-register myself to think of it in A minor so that I could get the open harmonics. And then so the extreme, this A and B, and then coming together in the E and F, the minor second. So defining A minor as the relationship of E to F and B to C.
Wow.
The A minor, the natural minor, the Aeolian minor. So I think about the idea of defining tonality by dissonance, rather than being defined by the general theoretical way they think about it in terms of the third, or so the seventh, or but I thought about it as defined by the minor second. That defines the tonality for me when so it kind of opens this idea of, and they actually had a body they had a scrim with puppets, and you see the bodies floating down to into the scrim. That's how we did in Chicago. In Spoleto, when we did the opera later, they did it as the goddess appears almost as Michelle Obama. She comes out and she makes her case with the Supreme Court. You see the justices of the Supreme Court up there, and it's almost like this moral case that was never really made in court against the moral outrage that slavery is. So that was a different way of doing it. But the original idea was I was really thinking about the bodies floating to the bottom of the ocean, and it's interesting because it kind of goes into recitative in the middle of the opera, middle of the aria, and then it comes back out. So it's kind of so formally it's very, very different from most arias in that way, So and it was very exciting to me. And then Florence sings it unbelievably well. And then she's just, and then I discovered things that are like rip them from the land. I said, okay. I had some orchestra stuff behind it. I said, no, it'd be better with nothing. Just let the voice have. Sometimes the most dramatic thing is, not having anything, just having the voice. It
definitely came across.
Yeah. So that was my thought there, so to have that happen. And at the end of the aria brings back the navigator's music, which is the ostinatos you hear under her is from the navigator's aria. And so it's the evocation of trying to be evocative of the sea, the ocean kind of thing, but also bringing it back. And then you hear the what the opening, that is on top of the navigator. So this idea of always when I write operas, I think about, because you're writing these long forms, you have to think in terms of memory. There's something that recalled from the past in the opera that comes back, and and you realize something that's unsaid in the navigator's aria is said here.
Amazing. It is your construction and your crafting of this is extraordinary, and this idea of the sea and the music of the sea comes across so powerfully.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. I mean, I was just listening to it originally on the radio, and I was like fascinated by it. And
well, it's interesting because the ocean. I had a lot of times I have different models of operas I studied that influence what I do. I mean, it's not direct in the terms of, but
right,
in this case, Peter Grimes was a big influence on it, sea interludes, and also, Britain, also his use of how he uses different tonalities against each other.
Interesting.
And actually the goddess aria, because it's the same, some of the key relationship has but he uses the kind of A minor and then an F major against it, and then it's and of course Moses and Aaron was the other model for it, because I was looking at the relationship of Cinque to the trickster, and the trickster basically like the Aaron character in the Schoenberg opera, very virtuosic, all this stuff happening, and Cinque is always grounded. I didn't do Sprechstimme for Cinque, but this idea of this the voice being grounded, etc., against the flightiness of and the humor as well of the trickster. So it's kind of Sport and Life meets Aaron.
I love it. That's fun and comical. There is so much. I am so looking forward to Amistad coming back to life. I mean, I think all of your work is going. I mean, the timing is now. I mean, now as in, if we recognize we're in the middle of COVID-19 internationally, but certainly by fall 2021 and absolutely in 2022. I believe that people are going to be drawn to your operas and to your music and to your messaging, because there's an interest in this at this time, and I don't know of any other body of work that speaks so poignantly to today. So, but in the interest of time, I want to go on. We're going to visit our last stop, which is the stop that enabled Anthony to receive the 2020 Pulitzer Prize for Music, which is his opera, The Central Park Five. I'm just going to quickly go to screen share with a static image, and then go into an excerpt, and then we'll come back and have a brief conversation, and then close out for today. So here we go. Back to screen share.
Early stars, hold your head high. Those worthy stars, stand up, step up, this world is ours. When you pretend not to see, not to hear, stop acting like you have something to fear. Our love is my This ain't no life to are the freaks who own the night. We are the freaks. We are the Blade Brothers who can't be killed. Freaks who own the night. We are the swords who can't be whipped. We're stressed out, freaks, down for everything and everything. We're out here, but we don't care. We are the young ones who keep coming. We are the freaks. We are the freaks who own the night. We are the freaks. We are the freaks who own the night. They stole from me all of them. The police, but hand them. Who's gonna pay me back? They stole my mind, my happiness. Oh, stolen, taken away, all gone. Who's gonna pay me back? Who's gonna put back the chunks of me that were ripped out? All I ever wanted was for truth to come shining through. I need everyone to know. But now that the truth has come, why does it hurt more than the lie that brought me so low?
Anthony, the floor is all yours.
Great Nathan Granner singing as
Yeah.
Corey Wise. And I have to give a shout out to George Clinton for from P-Funk. It's kind of inspired me for the We Are the Freaks.
Right.
And that was really fun because I was thinking of when they're going into the park. They're the excited teenagers going to the park, and then my first thought was to have that and then have hip hop stuff on the top of it, which is I was really interested in doing. But Richard wasn't really into hip hop so much. So the librettist, he's a wonderful librettist. So but I thought then I could set words. I could set if I told him to write text, a bunch of text that I could set that I could use. And I read so I saw that what they sing on top of that groove is inspired by that. There's something I've worked on a couple of my albums, Wakanda's Dream, when I first started doing that. But the idea of using speech rhythm, so that hip hop uses, but also more with pitch, so that use so that was exciting to do. I think I'm excited that I think New York City Opera is going to present Central Park 5 next spring, COVID permitting.
Yes.
So and hopefully it'll be in Central Park. We might actually do it in the park, or in Bryant Park in New York. So the plans are to do it in either Bryant Park or Central Park. And so I'm very excited about that. Doing a new production of it, and possibly doing a recording of the opera after. Yeah,
that's outstanding. Isn't Cincinnati Music Conservatory, Conservative Music, considering doing?
Yeah, they're doing some scenes, a concert of.
I see.
Too.
I see. Wonderful, wonderful.
So there's a lot of interest in it, and some of my other operas. I'm hopeful that X will be done soon too, as well. You know, it's going to end 2022, I think.
Outstanding. That's outstanding. I'm going to just move us forward. We're coming to the end, a little over time. I have one very brief final stop, and then I will open it up to questions. So let's go back into screen share. This is a kind of a concluding image and a combination of image and sound. And enjoy it, and we will be right back. And indeed, bravo. It's an amazing legacy of incredible work. I am just so honored to have an association with it. It's just an amazing legacy, really.
Well, thank you.
Oh, absolutely. So I'm going to open it up to questions. Please, if you have a question, just unmute yourself, and we'll look forward to hearing from you. I'm assuming there might be one question out there. Well, yes, someone is. Go ahead. No? I thought someone was unmuting. If you have a question, feel free to unmute yourself. Otherwise, we will.
I have a question.
Yes, introduce yourself, Paul.
Hi there. This is Paul Phillips up at Stanford University, and I've really enjoyed this. And wonder if Anthony Davis, if any of your operas are available on video, or if there's any way to see as well as hear some of your work.
Yeah, you can get my opera Lear on the Second Floor. If you go to www.learonthesecondfloor, you can find there's a website with the whole entire opera on it, and a video of the whole piece. There's also on liliththeopera.com. You have to say liliththeopera.com. That's my opera. Lilith has a concert of that, and then there's also an audio recording of that. Unfortunately it's so hard because of the union regulations to have video. I have a video of Central Park 5, but because of the relationship to the orchestra, et cetera, I'm not allowed to show it in public, you know, and you can have archival videos of stuff, but you can't really, release it to the public because of that, so that's always been an issue in America. In Germany and in Europe, it's a lot easier to make video recordings, et cetera. They don't have the same regulation of it in that way.
Right. Well, maybe I could just follow up with you to contact you is through the university email. Would that be like the best way?
Yeah, adavis@ucsd.edu. Yes, that's the best way to reach me.
Great.
And Paul has not told you fully who he is. He's also a composer and has quite a substantial history and connection to Stanford University. Paul, you want to say a little bit more?
Well, I was on the East Coast for a long time and actually was in the German opera house world for a while before that. But I've been at Stanford the last 3 years, and I'm teaching a course this fall. It's it's inspired by everything that's going on in the world right now, and also by George Lewis's article to some extent. So I'm teaching a course called Black Music Revealed, and I'd love to have you come and meet with the class by Zoom if you're available.
Oh, sure. I'd
And
love to do that. Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
So that's what I'd like to follow up with you about. And I'd also like to, I'm gonna of course ask them to familiarize themselves with your work, but that's what I was hoping there might be some videos. So
Well, I might be
yeah.
able. I'll see what I can do, because I can send links for some things, and sometimes so for an educational purpose, I might be able to do something. So.
Right. So I'm very excited, and I'm trying to learn as much as I can in a short amount of time. I've known about your work for a very long time, and I have to tell you something also. My wife is also an opera singer, and for a while she ran a company on the East Coast, Opera Providence in Rhode Island, and we used to talk about you, and one of her dreams was to commission an opera from you, but she struggled so much with just getting enough funding to day-to-day keep the opera company going that dream never materialized. But I just thought I'd share that with you.
Thank you. Yeah. Oh, thanks. I'll give my best to her.
I will.
Yeah, so it's a small world, and the world of Anthony Davis has a very far reach for sure. Does anyone else want to say something? I'm thinking of someone who might want to come and share with us, but if not, that's okay. I will give that person a minute. I think they know who I might be talking about, but if they don't, that's all good. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining me today with Anthony Davis for this new edition of Composers Conversation. It's been a great honor. It's recorded, and I will be uploading it to YouTube in the next day or so we can revisit it. Anthony, congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
For this well-deserved and overdue recognition with the Pulitzer Prize for 2020. And may it lead to so much more, as we already know that there is a new dawning coming. You're such a gifted composer, and who's created such an amazing and important canon of work. May the future be bright.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Bill. Thanks for your support.
Thank you, everyone, for coming, and we will stay in touch and have a chance to revisit this online. All right.
Okay, great. Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Take care.
Thank you.